Okay, we have some people already in the webinar. So hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to our Fafsa 101 workshop. Webinar. We're very excited to have you here. And thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Lizette Ruiz, and I am an outreach and grants representative with the office of Congresswoman Veronica Escobar. And we would like to thank you for joining us this evening. We will have probably some more folks join the webinar in a bit. And I want to take this moment to thank our panelists and Fafsa experts who are here with us today, Diana Valle from Utep and Elizabeth Estrada from EPCC. So thank you, ladies, for being here today with us. So we're going to go ahead and begin shortly, but before we begin, we're going to first hear a few words from the Congresswoman. So if we could go on to her message, please.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today for our introductory Fafsa workshop. I so wish I could have joined you live, but I am here in Washington, D.C., and we are taking votes on the floor, but you are in very good hands with my team in the El Paso office. I wanted to take this moment to let you know what an important thing you're doing by continuing or considering continuing your education. Education is the surest path to success. We all understand that higher education is a gateway to opportunities, but it's also a way to challenge yourself, to be exposed to new ideas, and to shatter barriers for future generations to come. That's why during these last 3 years as your representative in Congress, I've supported over 20 bills that address issues in our education system. From pre-K to college, I am committed to uplifting our teachers and students and finding ways to improve our public schools. Finally, I also understand that paying for an education today is more expensive than it was 30 years ago or even 10 years ago. Believe me, as the mother of a college-age daughter and the mother of a son in law school, I know how difficult it is to pay for a quality education. That's why I hope that this workshop will help you learn about the financial resources available to you and your family. Starting with federal student aid and the Department of Education. Thank you again for making the time to participate in today's session. Lizette, I'll pass the virtual mic over to you.
Okay, awesome, thank you. We were going to have translation services for this webinar. Unfortunately, due to some technical difficulties, we're not going to be able to offer those today, but please, we do have a Q&A. We will have a Q&A at the end, towards the end of the webinar. And if you do have questions and you would like to, have them and write them in Spanish into the chat, please do. We will be able to answer those for you. So just wanted to let you all know. Yes. So if you have any questions, please enter them into the chat and myself or Diana and Elizabeth will try to answer them. And then towards the end of the webinar, we'll allocate some time to answer any other additional questions as well. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started and I will pass it over to Diana and Elizabeth.
Thank you so much, Lizette. Welcome everyone to today's presentation. So we will be talking to you about financial aid. My name is, like I said, Diana Valle. I'm the outreach manager at Utep here in the Student Financial Services office. And then joining me is also Liz, if you would like to introduce yourself as well.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. My name is Elizabeth Estrada, and I'm part of Paso College Financial Aid Office. I'm my financial aid coordinator here at your services.
Thank you. So as Lizette mentioned earlier, if you have any questions, feel free to enter them on the chat in English or in Spanish. That's okay. We'll be able to answer those questions. So we'll go ahead and get started. So my very first question to you all is, what is financial aid? This is where most people get confused because we don't understand what financial aid is. What is it or what does it do? So financial aid is money that helps the student pay for their college or educational expenses. So this could include the cost of going to college, maybe the cost of, for their classes, for their books, their supplies, even for their housing. So financial aid is what helps the students pay for those expenses. And they can come from several different sources. It can be either from the federal government, it can come from the state government. So for example, the state of Texas. There could be financial aid that comes from the school that the student will attend, and also from private sources such as like private scholarships, for example. So all of this that is used to pay for your college expenses, that's what we refer to as financial aid. So a little bit more about what to do, how to get your financial aid. So the very first step is to complete your free application for federal student aid. This is what we typically refer to as the Fafsa. If you hear the Fafsa, maybe your student, they hear it at school, or maybe you get correspondence in the mail about filling out the Fafsa. Well, this is what it is. It's the application, and like it says it in the name, it's completely free, but it's the application that current and future students will use to determine if they qualify for any financial assistance. So this application, it's only available for US citizens and permanent residents that have a valid Social Security number. For those students that are foreign or non-citizens, but are Texas residents, there's a different application, and that's what we refer to as the Testva. It stands for Texas Application for State Financial Aid. So that's a separate application for those students, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later in the presentation. This application, it is something that the student will complete every year. So it's not a one-time application, it's something that they will complete every year for the future school year. The FAFSA is available every October 1st. So for example, this October 1st, that is when the new year opened, the new FAFSA opened for the next academic year, which is the 2022-2023 academic year. So every October 1st, I recommend students put on their calendars to make sure that on that date, starting on that date, they can go in and complete their application. We do recommend that students complete their FAFSAs by the priority deadline. Different schools have different deadlines. For example, at Utep, our priority deadline is January 15th. At EPCC, theirs is March 15th. So make sure that the student talks to the school to see when is the deadline for the FAFSA. The deadline doesn't mean that they cannot apply for financial aid after. All it means is that there are some funds, some type of financial aid that are limited. So because they're limited, they may be on a first come, first served basis. So that's why we recommend between October 1st and that priority deadline, make sure that you get your application submitted. That way you don't miss out on some of the opportunities just because you didn't fill out your application on time. There are two ways that you can complete your FAFSA application. The very first is by going online and visiting www.fafsa.gov, or there's also a mobile app. And so it can be downloaded on either your iPhone or maybe a different device, but it's called My Student Aid. So that's just a friendlier mobile version that you can also complete the FAFSA. It has the same questions, it just depends on your preference and how you want to complete that application. Okay, so once you complete your FAFSA application, this is what you're applying for. When you complete a FAFSA, you're applying for grants. Grants, it's financial aid that does not have to be paid back unless you drop some or all of your classes before finishing the semester. But grants, you get to keep that money. It's yours as long as you finish your semester. Then there's also work study. Work study is a program where students, if they have to work while they also go to school, it offers them a part-time employment opportunity. It's limited typically to 19 hours, for example, at Utep. But it's beneficial to the student because there are opportunities that they can, positions that they can apply to on campus. So that avoids the stress of having to maybe go somewhere off campus to work and then come back to class. You know, it avoids the commute. So it's a good opportunity for students if they qualify. Then the last type of student aid that the student is applying for are the loans. Loans, it is money that you borrow and the student will have to pay that money back. Also, just to mention, some schools, they don't consider you for scholarships. If you're interested in scholarships, they won't consider you until you've submitted a FAFSA. This is true for many, many scholarships. So we typically tell our students, even if you don't think that you're going to qualify for financial aid, maybe some of those grants, that's okay. We still recommend that you complete your FAFSA because, well, for one, you don't know if maybe you will be eligible to qualify for some financial assistance. And also if you're interested in applying for scholarships, most likely will request for you to complete a FAFSA anyway. So we always recommend, don't delay. If you're going to be going to school for college or university, complete your FAFSA. It's free. It takes 30 minutes the most if you're prepared with your documentation. And that way, you know, maybe you can receive some help to pay for your educational expenses. Also, this is something new for this school year. The FAFSA is actually a graduation requirement, and this was in efforts to improve the college and career readiness. So now, before the student can graduate from high school, they do have to complete a FAFSA application. Of course, parents or counselors or students that are over 18, they do have the option to opt out of it, so they don't have to complete it if they don't want to, but there is a form that has to be completed, and that form can be obtained and submitted to the student's high school. But this is, like I said, something new, so we recommend, as I mentioned before, just the reason to make it a requirement is just to make sure that our students, even if they don't understand the process of financial aid, if they happen to attend a college or university for their next, for the school year, then they would already have that application in there and it could help them pay for their college expenses where perhaps before they wouldn't have known of this opportunity. Okay, so there are 3 simple steps to complete your FAFSA application. The very first one is to create a federal student aid ID, and we refer to it as an FSA ID. This is the very first step before you can even get to the FAFSA application. So the FSA ID, that is a username and password that the student creates that serves as the electronic legal signature. So for the FAFSA, the student and possibly the parent will have to sign the application. So to do it electronically, this is what you need. The way that it works is that it requests information from you. So personal information like your name, your date of birth, and social security number, and it compares that with the social security, with the administration, and that way we can verify your identity. Once your identity is verified, then you can use that information, that username and password, to sign your FAFSA. So this is the very first step. You can create an FSA ID at the links that's on your screen, fsaid.ed.gov. So you go on there, just follow the instructions to create your FSA ID and password, and then you can use that to sign in to your FAFSA application. As I mentioned, parents may need to also create their own FSA ID because for dependent students, parents have to sign the student's FAFSA. So it could be possible that the parent already has an FSA ID because maybe they filled out a FAFSA for themselves. Maybe the parent is going to college as well, so they already have one. Or maybe they already have one because they used it to fill out the application, the FAFSA application for maybe another one of their children. So the FSA ID, it's a one-time username and password, so you cannot create multiple. So if the parents already have one, they need to make sure that they use that same one. For parents that do not have a social security number, because it does require a social security number, if the parent does not have one, that is okay. The student can still submit a FAFSA application. The only thing is that there's a different way for the parent to sign. The parent will have to print a signature page and then send it through regular mail. That's the only difference, but students can definitely still submit a FAFSA application even if their parents do not have a social security number. Okay, so once you have your FSA ID, the second step is to gather the documents that you need to complete the FAFSA. The FAFSA will ask you several questions about you and also your finances. So this is the information that you should have handy when you are completing your FAFSA application. So you will need your social security number. If you are a permanent resident, you will also need your alien registration number. If you filed your 2020 tax return, we will need that for you as a student and also possibly for your parent. We need any records of 2020 untaxed income. That could be, for example, child support or any type of different income that is not reported on the taxes. We would also need your balances of any cash savings or checking accounts and of any investments that you have. So as a dependent student, as I mentioned, your parent will also need to help complete the FAFSA, and all of this information will also be required from your parent. So we need all this information from you and your parent. If you are an independent student, then we only need this information for you and perhaps your husband or your wife if you are married. If you're not married and you're independent, then we just need your information. So in the next slide, we're going to go really quickly on how do you know if you're a dependent or independent student. And this is very important because most students believe, if you're self-supporting, meaning you have your own job, you pay for yourself, you live by yourself, you don't have your parents' help, that should make you independent. But unfortunately, for federal aid purposes, independent is only those students that meet at least one of the following criteria. So if the student can answer yes to at least one of these questions, that makes the student independent. If the student cannot answer yes to any of these, then that means that the student will be required to report the parents' information because they are considered a dependent student. So like I said, it does come down to these questions. So typically, if you don't fall under this, then you'll be considered a dependent student and will need your parents' information as well. Okay, so now that we have our FSA ID, and now that we have all of our documents, then the last step is to go into the actual application to complete the FAFSA. As I mentioned earlier, there's two ways. The very first one is to go to fafsa.gov on your desktop computer, your laptop. You can enter it on your internet browser and it will take you to the application. Or you can always download the My Student Aid mobile app, and you can also navigate through both of them. So let's say that you start your application on your phone, but then you want to switch to your computer. That's okay. All of the information is saved. So that helps in case that you need to switch devices. On the FAFSA application, these are the types of questions that will be asked from you. So it will have the student demographics. So that is, for example, the name, the date of birth, social security number, the address, residency, things like that. And then it will also ask for those dependency questions that we went over. It will ask those questions. That way the FAFSA can determine whether the student will be dependent or independent. Then the next section will ask about the information about the school. It will ask about what school that you have graduated from, so your high school or maybe an equivalency like your GED. So it will ask for that information. And then when it will also ask you to list the different institutions that you're interested in attending. So different colleges, the different universities that you're interested in attending, it will ask you to list those on the FAFSA as well. And the reason it does that is because all of the schools that you list on your FAFSA that you're interested in attending, the FAFSA, once it's complete, it will send a copy of your FAFSA to all of those schools. So that way, whenever you actually are admitted and you are enrolled in one of these schools, at least the FAFSA is already there at that school and we already know what you're eligible for. So that's what that's for. If you are considered a dependent student based on these dependency status questions, you will be asked for your parents' demographic information. Like I mentioned, your name, your parents' name, their date of birth, social security number. If your parent does not have a social security number, that's okay. They can just enter all zeros for that. It will also ask for the residency, things like that. And then it will also ask for yours and your parents, if it's required, for your financial information. So like I mentioned before, we do need your tax information, any information of unreported income, all of that will be then entered into that section, into the financial section. So this is an overview of really what is asked on the FAFSA application. So once you complete your FAFSA, you submit, you enter, you click on submit, and then you get a page that says congratulations, but you also get something that we call a student aid report, and we refer to it as a SAR. So after your FAFSA is completed, you get an email that has the information of all of the answers that you provided on your FAFSA. So ideally, what the student should do is that you need to review it carefully. Make sure you review this report carefully to make sure that you didn't make any mistakes. If you identify that a mistake was made, that's okay. You can always go back to the FAFSA, and there is an option for you to make FAFSA corrections. So you can always go there, make your corrections, and resubmit your FAFSA. But just make sure that you review this student aid report to make sure that it is accurate.
Diana, I'm going to intervene really quick just to remind folks that you are more than welcome to please enter your questions into the Q&A, into the chat. And we can see them and we are answering your all's questions. So I believe it's on the right-hand side towards the bottom. There's a little Q&A button or the chat button. Please go ahead and click on it, ask your question, and we will answer your questions. Sorry, go ahead, Diana.
Thank you. This is also something I want to mention. Once your FAFSA is submitted, there is a process that the student may be selected for. And that's what we call verification. Not all students are selected for this process. It's a randomized selection by the Department of Education. So like I said, not all students will be selected, but if you were selected for this process, all it does is that the financial aid office of the school that you'll attend, we will request additional documents from you. So for example, your tax information, we will request this information so we can compare it to your FAFSA just to make sure that whatever you put, whatever answers you indicated on the FAFSA match the documents that you have. So that's all we will do. We'll just compare to make sure it's accurate. If it's not accurate, let's say that there's a mistake on your FAFSA, don't worry. The financial aid office, that's what we're here for. We're here to help you get it corrected, and we'll help you through that process. So we'll just fix it, and that way we can get your true financial aid eligibility. Typically, the documents that we request are either a dependent or independent, depending on your FAFSA questions, but we ask for a verification worksheet. And on that worksheet, really all you fill out is just the number in your household, your number in college. Sometimes they may ask you for other information, but that's one of the documents. And then the second set of documents are your 2020 tax return information. And this is for the 2022-2023 academic year. That's the year that we will use for that FAFSA. Additional documents may be requested, but after that, it really is on a case-by-case basis to see if there's anything else, any more documents that we need from you to verify that your FAFSA is correct. But like I said, it's not typically anything you really have to worry about. Just make sure that if you are selected, work with your school, whatever institution you choose to attend, work with them. That way you can get this process completed as soon as possible, and that way you can get your financial aid awards. Okay, so that was the general overview of the FAFSA application. So now, as I mentioned before, we're going to talk a little bit about the Testva application. And this is the application for foreign students or those students that are also Texas residents. So Ms. Elizabeth, you can go ahead on these slides.
Yes, thank you, Diana. Yes, so I'll talk to you about the Testva. And then this is the other option that our students have. So we're fortunate enough to live in a state where we have plenty of opportunities, plenty of resources available. And for those students that do not qualify for the FAFSA, they do qualify for the Testva, which is great. And primarily, or you can think of the applications are very much alike. So students that do not qualify for the FAFSA because of their citizenship status, then they have the opportunity to apply for the Testva. That's the only difference. Each student will not need to apply for both. A student that is already applying for FAFSA, and if the institution counts with state funding, automatically will be able to add that funding to the student. There's no need for the student to do another application. So the Testva is just to provide resources to those students that do not qualify for the FAFSA. So it's another type or form of financial aid. The application, if it is managed or it's available at the same time as the federal application is available, which is as of October 1st. The difference between the FAFSA and the Testva. Testva, it's pretty much a paper application. The state, it's working very hard, the coordinating board, to have this available in a digital format, which we do have it kind of like in a fillable PDF format, but still students will have to fill out that application and then submit it directly to the institution of their preference. Now, let's say that one of our students might be undecided at this point and might be thinking, well, maybe, I don't know, and I'm just gonna use our institution since we're here, Diana and myself, whether the student is undecided whether to attend Utep or EPCC, then it might be a good idea to turn in a Testva application at each institution, because this one's, once again, this is not information that it will be shared among institutions, but the student needs to submit those applications, and funding, it is limited. So it is on the first come, first serve, and it meaning that depending how the institution, depending on how much of the funding of the institution might have at the time, will be available for our Testva students. So the sooner, the better. So as soon as October 1st, go ahead and start submitting your applications. The Testva application, it's available within our websites at EPCC, Utep. It is the same application. You're more than welcome to download it and turn it in at the institution of your preference. Go ahead and go to the next slide, please, Diana. Thank you. So who's eligible for the Testva? They have to be classified as a Texas resident. And then this is by the institution. And who does this? This will be the admissions office. So the admissions office will be the one that will make this determination, and it will be flagged for our systems. As far as the financial aid office, we will check on our system, and then we will already have this admissions process done by the student. So this is kind of like hand by hand. It's one of those things that the students will have to do, turn in your financial aid application or your aid application, but at the same token, start already working on your on your admissions process. So it's one of those that goes hand by hand. So the student has to be or must have been graduated from a Texas high school or must have obtained a GED within the state of Texas. Because keep in mind, this is within the state of Texas funding. And within the United States, there are other states that do offer this, but it goes state by state since this is a state funding. So if you're a Testva student and you are considering maybe attending somewhere else, then it's time for you kind of like to do a little bit of your homework and start looking into those websites. All institutions, we are required by the Department of Education to have all this information available to you all. Our students are consumers. And so you have all that information on your fingertips. Started doing a little bit of your research and what different types of opportunities you will have out there. You're planning attending somewhere else. Then also you must have lived in Texas for at least 3 years or have graduated from a high school within the state of Texas. What documentation is required? Diana talked about the different documentation that it's needed for the Fafsa. Same thing for the Testva. The state of Texas created the Testva application very similar. If you compare the application site to site, they're very similar. It just maybe the order of the items might differ a little bit, but other than that, it's the same thing. So for students, our males, they have to register with selective service. And I know some of our students do hear the word selective service and they think they're signing up for service. No, it's not that. That's not the case. They're not signing up for service, but they do have to be registered in order to be entitled to aid. If not, we will not be able to give them any aid. Their taxes, if there are tax filers, we know and we understand that not all our families, especially the type of city that we're a border city, and we have a broad combination of families and we all work differently and have different sources of income. So not everybody has to file, and that's okay. You don't have to file taxes in order to receive federal aid or state aid. It's okay, but however, you do need to be ready to provide some of those resources or let us know how is it that you supported yourself or your family or the student itself during that particular tax year. We did see a question coming into the chat as far as the tax year, and I'm assuming that they were a little bit confused about what type of taxes and if it was a 2020 or 2021. And just to explain just a little bit and as far as the financial aid, how it works. Department of Education has of right now has us utilizing income from 2 years back when we talk about tax-wise. So it is the financials that we did for 2020. And this is just to facilitate the financial aid process for our students. Department of Education at one time saw the difficulty in some of the families, and then to alleviate a lot of the burden for those students of not having their taxes ready, or parents not being able to file on time. There were some students that they were not able to apply for financial aid. So that's why the Department of Education at that point decided to go 2 years back as far as taxes. So that's why we asked for the upcoming application. We verify information, or we ask for tax information or financials pertaining to the tax year 2020. For those students also that they don't have, they don't file taxes, and there might be the need of verification, but it's a letter of verification, non-filing letter, which some of our institutions, we do have, Diana, and please correct me if I'm wrong, on Utep side, we do have at EPCC, we do have a statement if the student's unable to get it at the IRS. We know that current circumstances might prevent the students from getting certain documents from different entities. And currently we do have some mechanisms in place where we can replace and facilitate the process for our students. And this is one of them. If they're not able to obtain something from the IRS, and in some instances, since parents might not have a social security number or students might not have a social security number, then they will need to fill out a non-filed letter, but we will be able to provide those internally. Now, whether you have completed or the student has completed a FAFSA or a Testva, some of our students are of the assumption of, yay, I'm set, I'm done. I completed my application. Okay, when do I get my money? No, it doesn't work that way. So until the student does not receive an award letter, that is when the student can say, okay, this is how much resources or how much money I'm getting from each institution. So nothing will be final until then. Until the student does not receive that award letter. Once that the student receives that award letter, then, or that award offer, that means that those are the resources I'm counting on with, and that is final. Because oftentimes our students might be missing a piece of document. Something simple as if you're a new student to our institution, and that applies to EPCC, Utep might have a different mechanisms. Although we work hand by hand, we try to have our process very similar to facilitate our students' transition. For example, at EPCC, if you're a new student, you need to sign an authorization form, meaning you need to let us know, yes, I'm okay accepting my awards, and I'm willing to receive this. So if you don't have this on file, we won't be able to pay for any of your classes. You will not be able to receive any aid until we don't have that on file. So until you don't receive that award letter and that clearance, then you're all set and ready to go. Our best piece of advice, it's for you to reach out to any of our offices and make sure that everything is complete, or check on our websites. We are constantly working within our systems, within our internal systems, to make sure that you have the ability to check on your statuses and find out if anything else might be pending. Now we're about to wrap up with our contact information, although we do want to open it up for questions. And both institutions, please, I mean, it is our pleasure to serve you all. Diana and myself, we work together in many of initiatives. As an institutions, we have the pleasure to know ourselves for a couple of years now. And I mean, we have a very good relationship. We are here to assist and facilitate those resources to you all. We, both of us, I guess, we are all in for education, and it is our pleasure to see and provide those resources to our community, to all of you, to make sure that those resources that we have available within our hands are available to you all, and you're able to utilize them to the best of your convenience.
Thank you, Liz. I did want to, there's a couple of questions that we haven't answered on the chat, and I just wanted to make sure that I answered them. So to the question about, do I apply for FAFSA first, then if denied, then apply for the Testva? Okay, so it would actually be either you complete a FAFSA or a Testva. It would not be both because they have different requirements. Remember, for the FAFSA, we mentioned that for that one, it's for US citizens and permanent residents that have a valid social security number only. If that is not you, if you are foreign or non-citizen and you are a Texas resident, then you would complete the Testva. So it's one or the other, it would not be both. I just want to make sure I clarified on that. And then there's another question. If I went to EPCC a while back, can I still get FAFSA? That really depends. It depends on if you've already met your maximums, because there are limits to the types of financial aid and the amounts that you can receive. So, you know, it depends if you already met those limits. It also depends on your standing with EPCC. So there's a lot of factors. Liz, if you want to mention anything about that.
Yes, I would like to add, and you are correct on all the statements that you mentioned, Diana. Right now, although we have an excellent opportunity for those students that have been out and are seeking to return, we do have a program that it's called Reskilling. It's a grant that we have, and you probably have seen it out there in the billboards. That is about EPCC, that there's up to $2,500, and it pays for your tuition and fees. So although if you are no longer eligible for FAFSA, or meaning that within the institution, because what it happens, we are a 2-year program institution, meaning you complete associate's degrees, certificates, or different kinds of credentials. So we will have to look into more into detail in your specific record to see what's your standing point. But my best piece of advice will be to reach out, please reach out to me, and let's see if you qualify for the Reskilling grant, and then you might be able to benefit from that grant. And all you have to do, once again, will be to apply to the FAFSA, although you might not be getting any resources from there if you're already over the limit, but you will be qualifying more likely for the Reskilling.
Thank you. There's another question. Does the application need to be printed, signed, and mailed, or is electronic sufficient? If you completed your FAFSA electronically, that is all you need. Like I mentioned, you will get a confirmation page to your email letting you know that the FAFSA has been submitted. And that, like I said, that's your confirmation that it's done. The only time that you have to print and sign and mail is for the parent that does not have a social security number. Those are typically the only types of people that have to actually sign, print a signature page, sign it, and mail it in. But if you were able to do it electronically, then that is all that we need from you. And Victor, is there another program to assist if disabled? We do have a department here on campus, at least here at Utep, that do help with disabled students. If you would like, you can email us at that email that's on your screen, and we would provide you with the information of that office, but we definitely do have some assistance for that. Liz, do you want to mention anything on your end?
Yes, same thing. I mean, we do have the department as well, who has all those resources for you. More than welcome to refer you over. And also just to add, I mean, currently we do have a lot of resources. We're thankful to have the opportunity to offer a lot of resources to our students that are currently enrolled. We have different federal funding and state funding that we're able to award to our students. And all they have to do is be registered. Yes.
And there's also institutional funds, so funds that come from the university or the college. So we really recommend, if you are interested in pursuing an education, just make sure that you contact the financial aid office. We do have a lot of different programs that we could help with. So, you know, always complete your FAFSA. That's the very first step, as I mentioned before. That's the very first step to determine what you qualify for. And I also want to mention, it's a common question. You do not have to submit several different applications, typically with just the FAFSA. That is the application that we use to determine if you qualify for any financial aid from the state, from the school. So we really use that application to determine all of that. So just make sure that you get that done if you haven't done so.
Okay, thank you, Diane and Elizabeth. I think we also have some questions in the Q&A, and I don't know, maybe some of them have been answered, but we'll go through them in case some of them haven't been answered yet. So we have a question. What if I don't remember my username and password for my old FAFSA?
That's a good question. Go ahead, Liz.
Yeah. That's an excellent question. I mean, we as an institution, us as administrators, we don't have the ability to reset your credentials, but if you call the Department of Education directly, and as a matter of fact, they even have a chat, so you can talk to them via chat. I mean, for me, that's very convenient. I was able to assist a student that way once. So go ahead and give them a call. They will reset everything for you so you can create all those credentials again.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And another question is, what is the earliest grade that a student can start the application process? Can a junior in high school apply?
Liz, let me just mention really quick for that question about the password. If you need to contact Fafsa directly, I'm going to put the number on the chat. That way you have it for the future. It's something that, if you have any trouble with either your Fsa Id and password or your Fafsa, that's the number that you can reach out to. So it's 1-800-433-3243. And then we did answer the question for Joseph, but that way everybody can hear. Typically for junior students, if the student is planning to attend in the summer after they graduate, then yes, the latest FAFSA that's available, they can go in and complete that one. But if they're going to wait till the fall after they graduate, then they wouldn't fill out this application. They would have to wait till the next one, which would be the 2023-2024 application.
Diana, and if I can add just a little bit, because I just remember of a question that I also read earlier and I was able to answer to someone. And just to maybe to clarify, how is it that the academic years work? They might be a little bit confused on that. Because they were asking me which applications should I fill out, the 2021 or 22, 23. That was the question that I had gotten earlier. So just to clarify, and it lines up with what Diana was mentioning about when exactly it's that you're planning to enroll, and the way that the academic year is. So if the application says 2022, 2023, meaning for most institutions that financial aid or when it will cover, it will be during the fall of 2020. Hold on, 20, what is it? We're talking 22, 23. Yes, so what will be fall of 2022, spring of 2023, and summer of 2023. So that's how it normally works for most institutions. There's some institutions that might start before, so they might require you to fill it out the other application. But for us, that's how it works.
And also for Utep.
Yes, so I hope that that I was clear on that. Let us know if it was a little bit confusing, then maybe we can explain it a little bit different.
Got a question in the chat. If we could please repeat the FAFSA phone numbers. So that phone number is 1-800-433-3243. I'm going to repeat it again. It's 1-800-433-3243.
Thank you.
And so we do have some more questions in the Q&A. The next question was, is there any range of salary that will be considered for approval in FAFSA? No more than or no less than?
And the answer to that is no.
No, yeah, there is, and unfortunately it's not that easy. And I answered this also in the chat, and I'll put it on the Q&A as well. But the Department of Education, they use different pieces of information to make that determination, to determine what types of financial aid you qualify for and the amounts. So unfortunately, it's not as easy as just a limit. They also consider, for example, how many people are in your household, how many are going to college for that year, where's your state of residence, what is your income? So all of these different questions are used to make that determination. So unfortunately, there's not, for example, an income limit to qualify. It really does depend on all of the questions that you answer on the FAFSA.
And if I can add something else as well. And then if you think about it, remember Diana at the beginning explained what different types of financial aid is available. So when we talk about financial aid, we're not only talking about the Pell Grant, we're talking about all these different resources. And when you put it in that perspective, then everybody will qualify for something. So everybody will qualify for some sort of type of financial aid. Although it might be, direct loans, it might be something else, but everybody will qualify for something.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So we do have a couple of questions that I think were answered in the chat, but not everyone was able to view them. So we'll just go over them in case some other people had that same question. We only have some left. So we have a question. Hi there. So I'm interested in the firefighters course at EPCC. There are 2 pathways, an associate's and a certificate. Are both covered by Fafsa?
Yes, well, right now, if you enroll right now, we are able to cover you with the program I was telling you, the Reskilling grant. You will be able to qualify for that one. And since it is for elites to an associates, yes, it is covered.
Thank you. The next question is, besides the Yellow Ribbon program, are there any other programs out there which specializes in assisting veterans?
For that question, as at least at Utep, we do have different programs that are available for veterans and anyone military related. So typically for our military students, we do, and I'll respond to the Q&A. I'll be putting in the link to our Military Student Success Center, and it has their information there, so you can definitely reach out to them to see what other programs are available and what you qualify for.
And for us, we also have a Veterans Affairs office, which is part of the financial aid office. So if you're seeking for more information, you're more than welcome to connect to our virtual office. They'll be able to assist you there and provide you with additional resources.
Another question we have is, if you have already done your FAFSA on October the 2nd, when will UTEP notify us of what type of financial aid my daughter will be receiving?
Good question. So here at UTEP, we are already working on those awards, to determine what the student qualifies for. So you should expect as an incoming freshman, you will get some correspondence in the mail, as well as electronically letting you know of what you qualified for here at UTEP. And that's usually, we're estimated to send out that information in late January, early February, but that's when we'll be sending out those award letters.
Another question is, do I have to include my husband's finances on my FAFSA application if our financials are kept separate?
Yes, we do. If you are married, when you are filling out the FAFSA, it's going to ask you what is your marital status. So whether you are single, divorced, separated, married, and based on that, if you answer that you are married, then even if you file your taxes separately, for example, you still have to enter the information of your husband or your spouse. And that's usually when it comes to the section of entering your tax information, then what you would have to do, since you have them separate, you would have to just add up the information from your taxes and also from your husband, add them together, and that's how you will complete the FAFSA.
Thank you. And so I think you may have answered this already, Diana. How long does it take to know if the FAFSA application was accepted?
Well, okay, so that's I'm not sure with that question. The FAFSA application, it's not that it gets accepted or denied. When you are completing your FAFSA, once you submit it at the end, it's going to say, congratulations, your FAFSA application has been submitted. If you mean, how long does it take for you to find out if you qualified for any financial aid? Then, like I said, for UTEP, incoming students, they will find out early next year. but I'm not sure EPCC with Liz, if you have a time frame for EPCC when they should know.
Once they have, I mean, the Department of Education will process within 3 business days, and then we will probably have it within our system within a week or so. And that's for current academic year. For the new academic year, 22-23, we're still in the works on that. So we will probably have notifications to students sometimes in January, February.
Right. So, I mean, once the application is submitted, we will get that here at Utep or at EPCC. We get the information, but we do not actually send correspondence to students letting them know what they qualified for until later. So that, I guess, for EPCC and Utep, it's the same time frame,
Yeah.
typically January, February. That's when we'll be sending out that correspondence to our students, letting them know what financial aid, what type and amounts of financial aid the student qualified for.
Correct.
Mhm.
But yes, I mean, and the application will still get processed. The students will receive direct notification from the Department of Education saying that it has been processed and submitted to us, the institution.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And we have one more question. So if someone has a grievance, do they regarding like their counseling for their classes, who is a contact that they can go to?
Is it for EPCC or UTEP? Well, I mean, I can provide the information for, yeah, Liz, I don't know if you have that already available for you.
For grievance, let me see. Well, yeah, I mean, we'll be with, we'll have to start with over here with our vice president's office, and then they'll take it from there. Yes, I mean, I can provide a contact information. Not sure for which institution do they need it, but it will be our pleasure to provide that. Let me just gather that information and I'll post it in the chat in just a bit.
Okay,
Yes,
thank
I
you.
will also do that.
And we have one last question. So I'm assuming that although I'm the step parent, my income will be used as a determiner of my stepdaughter's status, correct?
Yes, I did. For that question, if you are married to your stepdaughter's mom, then yes, because like I mentioned earlier, it's going to ask for the parent's marital status. So if the parent's marital status is married, then that would be her mom and your information that we would be requesting. So if that's the case, then yes. If a different scenario that could happen is that if you are, maybe if your stepdaughter's mom, if she passed away, if you are widowed, then in that case, we would not need your information as the step parent unless you legally adopted your stepdaughter. So that could be also another scenario that could happen.
Thank you so much, Diana. And I think we have answered all of the questions that were in the Q&A. So again, just really wanting to extend our thanks to Diana and Elizabeth for your expertise and for your time. We really, I think we're able to answer a lot of great questions, and this was very informative. So thank you so much to both of you, and thank you to the attendees who attended and for all of your questions as well.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
You're very welcome. A pleasure.
Yes, and yeah, so I believe that wraps up our webinar. Thank you again to everyone who attended. So this presentation will be posted onto Congresswoman Escobar's YouTube channel. So if you are not subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and subscribe, and you will be able to find this presentation, the recording of the presentation there. If you have any additional questions, you do have Diana and Elizabeth's information, and please go ahead and reach out with any further questions.
And Shirley, I believe you had a question. Your hand is raised. Did you want to, I'm not sure if you have the capability to unmute.
No, but Shirley, if you can please put your question again in the chat. Sorry, it may have been, we had quite a few questions that may have been overlooked. Okay. Well, see if Shirley is able to ask her question. I can't find it in the chat. Okay, but yeah, so I can't find her question in the chat or their question in the chat, but you know, if you have any additional questions that weren't for some reason that was overlooked during the workshop, again, you can reach out to Diana and Elizabeth or myself. Oh,
I'm sorry, Lisa, I found her.
okay.
Cheryl, I have another question for work study. Do students qualify for that only if they are given a grant?
Okay, so for work study, not necessarily. There are different requirements for the work study. So typically what we tell our students is when you are filling out your FAFSA, go in and it will ask a question that says, are you interested in work study? We recommend just select yes, and it doesn't bind you to anything. It just gives us a notification that you are interested. And what we will have you do is submit, at least here at Utep, we do have an application that you have to submit. And you can get that at Utep. You can send us an email at studentfinancialaid@utep.edu. You can send us an email, let us know that you would like the work study application. And then once it's submitted, you will be contacted to let you know if you qualified to participate in the work study program, but it's not necessarily based on whether you received a grant. Liz, I don't know if there's anything for that you want to add for EPCC.
It is pretty much the same thing. I mean, we make the same recommendation to go ahead and opt in for it. I mean, once again, it doesn't up to him for anything other than the possibility of getting additional resources. And I mean, if you don't use it, it's okay, but it just notifies that you are interested on participating in the work study program.
Mm-hmm. You're very welcome, Shirley.
Yes, it is our pleasure.
Okay, so I believe that wraps up all of the questions that we had. Thank you, Shirley, for putting in your question again and for your patience. And yes, I believe that wraps up our webinar. Please make sure to take down this information or snap a photo of the contact information before we end the webinar. And again, thank you to everyone, to our panelists and attendees. We appreciate you, and we hope that you have a wonderful rest of your evening. So thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good night. Bye-bye, everyone.